Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What's your craziest potential paranormal experience? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was about 6, I lived in a duplex in Section 8 housing projects with my dad and my brother, who was 2 years older than me. The place had an upstairs, but it was blocked off. We lived there for maybe a year, but during that time, several things would happen. During the summer, the thermostat, which neither my brother nor I could reach, would get cranked up to 80 degrees a few times every week. Sometimes there would be a really loud crash upstairs, like something heavy had been slammed on the floor. It would sometimes get really cold. One night my brother woke up and he was being choked. He ran to my dad's room and there were red marks around his throat. We went and stayed with my grandparents and moved to another duplex a few blocks away about a month later. Not long after, the place burned down. Let's see if I can put this into words that make sense. My significant other and I had a toddler and a newborn at the time, so I was in bed because, well, 2 demanding children, and he worked nights out of town but was home that night. I was trying to watch some TV in my bedroom and it kept going to the Netflix guide where you put in what movie you were looking for. It was driving me crazy, as I would get into 5 minutes of the movie and it would pause, then go into the guide. It wasn't trying to spell anything, but it kept doing it. I gave up yelling for my SO to stop effing with me and the TV. And he came into the bedroom and was like, "What?" Then went back to the living room because I gave up trying to watch whatever movie it was. This was 4 years ago, LOL, and turned the TV off and went on my phone. My SO starts texting me that the TV in the living room is doing it. Netflix was on the PS4. I think I could be wrong. I'm not a gamer, sorry. So completely different setup than in the bedroom. Except he had it on video and was sending me these. I wish I still had those videos. So he's sending me these and on his it's spelling out YARM. And he's showing me that he's not touching the controller at all. We figured out that it was his mom's name spelled backwards. What this spirit was trying to spell out was Mary. At this point, I'm freaked out and just said, "If this is Mary, you're freaking us out. Can you please leave?" And the back door that I could hardly open opened and then slammed shut. Knock on wood, it hasn't happened since we moved and I hope it doesn't again. I don't mind spirits, but I like them not to F with my shit or near us, where we can see the things. I use my telescope almost every night from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and about 2 years ago, I was busy tracking Jupiter to finish a video I was going to stack into a photo later that night. I want to say it was about 1 at the time, and I heard someone who sounded identical to my older sister yell my name, which is Gavin, from the creek bed about 45 feet from where I sat, down an embankment that drops maybe 15 to 20 feet into a thorn-infested pit. Nobody could have been down there. Not only is it hard to drop into the creek bed, but there's poison ivy and blackberry bushes lining the entirety of the bed. I heard it loud and clear, "Gavin! Gavin!" But it wasn't an urgent yell. It almost sounded curious or like a question, but it was just loud as F. I was frozen in place for a second and immediately folded up the telescope and carried it back inside. When I was done, I went upstairs and knocked on my sister's door. No answer, and I assumed she was asleep. My only guess is that maybe, just maybe, she got up briefly and opened my door into my bedroom and yelled my name twice, because my window is parallel to the creek and my window was open at the time. I kinda had to convince myself she sleepwalked into my room and yelled for me before going back into her bedroom just a few feet from mine so I could fall asleep. That was the only time I've ever had each hair on my body stand up. I can only explain the feeling as being a deer and suddenly realizing a predator is on your ass. Not to mention, it was pitch black and all I had was my phone light for adjusting the focus knob. I remember when I was probably about 16, hiking out along these old train tracks decommissioned near my house late at night, mostly just because I could, testing the waters of freedom after my parents had gone to bed, smoking a little. They sort of stayed pretty close to civilization, at least where I would hike along them, so I never felt like I was deep in the woods, which was nice because you could take a relaxing walk at night along them without worrying about getting lost. There was this rusted out husk of a pickup truck out in the woods near this little stretch of farms that you could access from the tracks that I always liked to visit. It was positively filled with beer cans. I always wondered how the hell it got so deep in the woods. Ooh, paranormal woods truck. Just kidding. Heh. It was super old and had no tires in it, so I popped in, crawled through the window, really bad idea, miracle I never got tetanus, and sparked up a little bit. So, I hear this branch cracking nearby. Not like a branch falling noise, but a branch that's been stepped on, heavily. Not too uncommon, but a little scary because you don't know what animal it is. And at this point, I'm pretty turned. My night vision's not so good. So I'm suddenly very aware that I'm alone, and I've gone from a nice relaxing toke to a tingle at the base of my skull and a shiver creeping down my spine. I sort of ducked down in the truck a little, but I was still sort of looking around, trying to see what might have made the branch crack, when I hear another loud crack, and what sounds like something rolling or being dragged through the woods. So now I start to really panic because I'm effing high, and I'm starting to think these are human footsteps. I'm thinking maybe it's one of these guys who lives on the farms nearby, and they're going to be furious I'm hanging out in the truck where they apparently like to drink a lot, and I'm imagining some deliverance type shit going down. I'm thinking this guy's going to be pissed I've trampled in his sacred drinking spot. So I strain my eyes trying to see this guy, and I finally see a little motion coming from the direction of the road or plot. So I'm like, shit, that's 110% the guy who lives there. So I duck down all the way and set to praying, bizarre stoner prayers. You know, I wasn't religious, but please, Lord God, if you're real, no offense. Or trying to feel that connection to the universe, that feeling like somehow things are going to be okay through the sheer power of positive thought. So, as it gets closer, I hear this metallic sound, like this dude is dragging some big metal container. It's weird because I almost felt stone cold sober after that. It's like my fear just overwhelmed my high, and suddenly I just didn't even feel high. I'm thinking, why the hell is this farmer dragging a metal crate out into the woods in the middle of the night? I don't know what time it was, but if I had to guess, I'd reckon 3 to 3:30. I'd stashed my weed, but my sense of smell was still gone, and I'm thinking he's going to get too close and smell the weed, and I'm blown. I'm also having these panoramic fantasies like he's hiding a body in a barrel or something, and I'm just wigging out. Like, best case scenario, this guy calls my parents or the cops. Worst case scenario, I'm about to get tortured to death. Like I said, just total paranoia stuff. So, okay, to the short of it, really. As I'm praying and praying, I hear this guy getting closer and closer, and I'm going, please go away, go away. And he just keeps getting closer and closer. So I'm listening and listening, and I hear this loud clunk, and suddenly all the noise stops for a second. I get this sudden terror that he's looking at me, that some part of me is sticking out of this truck, and I started to cry a little, just thinking in my head, please, please, please. Then I hear this jostling, and what sounds like a sort of struggling and grunting breathing, and then just this sigh of exasperation, and the footsteps receding away. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, and I look up out the car, and I can't see shit. And so, finally I decided I can't wait any longer in case he's coming back. I hopped out of the other window and booked it back down to the tracks. I cut the shit out of my face and hands on some branches on the way, but I just kept it effing going. So, maybe you're reading this and thinking, that wasn't paranormal at all, bro. You felt connected to the universe on drugs and then didn't get caught trespassing. Wow, what an interesting story. Tell it again. And that's all true and fair, okay? But then, I won't give the details because it's Googleable and I don't want information about me on the internet, but there's this prominent murder in my town. It makes Dateline. Everybody is shook. It just feels totally senseless. And at about the same time, I'm about 17, I learned that the old farmhouse where the beer truck is has been abandoned for a decade. My drug-addled teenage brain starts spinning all these wild theories, like maybe that guy was a serial killer that night, maybe he was dissolving a body in a barrel of acid or something, maybe I was inches from death. So, after talking with my friends, I tell my parents a sanitized version of the experience, and we decide I should tell the police because, like, the town was just in a state of hysteria. So my parents took me to talk with them, really nervous, and we had this really informal interview, not even with a homicide cop, and they gave me the, "Sure, we'll look into it." And I'm on my way, feeling kind of sheepish and stupid, like maybe I was just wasting their time. About a week later, I find out, same time as everyone else, that they actually looked into it, and they found a meth lab in the basement of the place. Turns out some tweakers had moved in there. What really F's me up is that they had apparently smeared dog blood on the walls, and I heard there were pentagrams and other weird tweaker symbols smeared on the walls amidst the filth. They also apparently trapped the place with some Home Alone type stuff by Deadlier, which is just effing wild to me. I don't know that they ever caught the folks who had moved in there. I guess they cleared out after the cops showed up. Oh my god. So my parents and I were immediately horrified. I think I really was close to death that night. I don't know what that meth head would have done to me if he had found me in that truck. I also get to thinking that they must have been using those same tracks to get around, just the same as I was, since they didn't park their cars or whatever by the abandoned building. So I just as easily could have met them there, and I'm just thinking about all the crazy luck I had, that I had wanted to get in the truck in the first place. Imagine if he had stumbled on me in the open. I had the absolute fear of God in me when I heard that first crack. I immediately ducked down, and I had the paranoia to stay down, and then I did something weirder for me. I prayed, and I prayed, and I tried to get in contact with those greater forces to keep me safe. I said, "Please, please, please." And suddenly, whatever that guy was dragging got stuck. All my most paranoid fantasies were really probably right. This guy, or his friends, tortured dogs apparently. He totally could have done that to me. It's like nature itself called out to me, and I'm sorry, but it's like the cannabis saved me. Like it put me in contact with something that kept me safe. If I'd been sober, well, I wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place, but I also would have given myself up probably. I would have decided to face the music and take a conversation with the cops and a ride from my parents. Or I would have tried to run away from him. In both scenarios, I'd definitely have gotten shot. I'm sure of it. I feel, and it's stupid, but I feel like I came into contact with the forces of evil that night, and the forces of good kept me safe and steered me clear of the danger. To be clear, I don't think they had anything to do with the murder. I can't give any details because, like I said, I don't want to give away any details about myself, but while the murder is, I think, still unsolved, there's plenty of reason to believe it's wholly unrelated to these satanic meth heads. That was very long. I have a ghost who follows me. She has been since I was about 6 years old. It's an 8-year-old little girl who became attached to me when we moved out of town and into a new house. She was already there, but exposed herself to me within weeks of living there. She has followed me every day since then. She didn't like my last roommate. She would do scary shit like throw the clock off the wall. A knife came flying out of the dish rack and fell about 6 feet from where it was and landed in front of her child. We would be hanging out in my room and we would swear we would see somebody walking up and down the hall very quickly, but nobody was there. If I'm around negative or bad energy people, she will do whatever she needs to get me away, which including keeping me away at night by either unable to sleep or sweating so bad I cannot sleep, regardless of temperature or how cold it was in my room. I get readings done by an African woman I know, and when I walked into her office for the first time, she asked me to stop right there so she could approach the girl. I have 2 daughters, but neither of them were with me that day. She also said she felt an evil energy following me. I told her he tries to come close, but can never get closer than a foot near me. I told her it was her father, and I think he's upset that she chose to come with me. When we moved in that house, I felt the energy of the little girl, an older boy around 12, and a very abusive dad. I can tell he was a hard worker because I would hear the sounds of boots walking into the kitchen while I would be doing something. The landlord was hesitant to tell our family what happened or if anything happened, and he took it to his grave with him. Before his wife passed away years later, She told us on Halloween night in '89, the man went and killed several people through the town before he went home and killed his 2 children and himself. Definitely not super crazy, but still kind of fun and never explained to this day. I used to manage a movie theater and would often help set up and run the projectors. Nowadays, everything is run by a computer. Studios send you keys that unlock a file at a certain time, which can then be uploaded to a projector. Of course, there are issues. Sometimes the studio will send you a corrupted file. Sometimes the timestamp is put in incorrectly and causes the projector to think the movie ends earlier than intended. And sometimes the studio will send the wrong previews pack. But the one thing studios don't do is send you a movie named one thing when it's an entirely different movie. Disney will never send you a file named Thor Ragnarok, but it'd be Moana or something. So if you upload Thor into a projector, and Thor is the only movie on that projector, then that projector is only going to play Thor. There is no reason for it to play anything else. Never had an issue with this until we got one particular movie, The Conjuring 2. Any projector The Conjuring 2 was on would do the weirdest stuff. It'd be 2 a.m., all the projectors would be off, theater completely empty, and I'd be doing my last round of checks before going home, and I'd hear a movie playing. It'd be The Conjuring 2, playing on a projector that is showing as off at a time that it isn't scheduled to play. During normal business hours, The Conjuring 2 would just start playing on a projector it wasn't even on. This happened once in a house that was solely showing kids' movies, and a lot of parents were pissed. Power would just go out in whatever house was supposed to be playing the film. The movie would start at the scheduled time, but it'd start in the middle. Just weird shit. I'm a huge scary movie fan, and I know the Warrens were frauds, so it wasn't like I was afraid of the movie or anything. Personally, I don't really enjoy the Conjuring movies. The first one's good, and the second one wasn't anything to write home about. So it wasn't like this particular scary movie was something special. It just caused weird, unexplainable shit to happen. So I've always said it, there was something spooky going on with it, lol. I have quite a few, and most of them revolve around my parents' house. So we call the ghost in my parents' house Casper, original. She never does anything to harm anyone, but it's sure like messing with us, me in particular. Here's a few stories. 1. When I was 14ish, I lived in the upstairs loft of our house. I had one of those huge Iowa stereos with a big light-up screen. Since my room was right above my parents', I could turn the radio up to a certain volume, and my parents couldn't hear it. One notch up, and they could. Laying in bed one night, listening to music, the radio just started getting louder. I look up and the volume numbers are slowly climbing. 5, 6, 7, 8. I say, Casper, turn it down so you don't wake up Mom and Dad. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Right back to where I had it. 2. The stairs to my room were extremely creaky, like so loud if my parents were sleeping, it would wake them up. Impossible to sneak in or out of my room. One night, while laying in bed facing the wall opposite to the staircase, I get this strange feeling like I was being watched, so I flipped over to look towards the stairs. My room is lightly lit up by the Iowa stereo from the previous story. Once my eyes adjust, I see what looks like a shadow standing at the top of the stairs facing me and not moving. I say, Pop, is that you? And no reply. Then the shadow turns and slowly walks down the stairs, without the stairs making a single sound. Guess Casper wants to check in on me. 3. When I was around 18, I would be up and gone to work before my parents. One afternoon, I get a call from Dad and he asks if I was messing with anything in their room. I said, no, I was gone before you all were up and haven't been home since I left. Why? My dad tells me when him and my mom got home from work, the 2 medieval ball and chains that had on plaques were laying perfectly centered on each side of the bed. 4. This is by far the scariest one. After me and my ex-wife split, I moved back home. I had nothing but my clothes, so I was sleeping on an air mattress. The air mattress was about 2 feet off the wall, so it didn't melt or block the air of the heater vent. Me and my ex got into a huge argument on the phone. Naturally, I was super pissed off and just laid on the bed. Next thing I know, the bed goes flying and slammed into the wall and me into the wall as well. Now, I'm not light by any means, probably 200 pounds at the time, so it would take some force to slam us both into the wall like that. It's like Casper was telling me to cut that shit and calm down. Sorry for the long read, but that's a few of the more memorable paranormal stories I have. Definitely have more if y'all interested. I've always been sensitive to paranormal energy, but the creepiest was this one. Some years ago, my brother-in-law was stealing money from his and my wife's father. Their father had Alzheimer's and brother-in-law had manipulated tens of thousands of dollars from him. My wife found out and moved their father into a care facility and never told her brother where he was. Fast forward several years later, my wife and I were walking through a downtown market street one evening, and all of a sudden, the sounds in the area stopped. All the hair on my body stood up. It felt like something really bad was about to happen. Then, as quickly as the sound stopped, it came in a rush and the feeling was gone. We were notified the next morning that my brother-in-law had died right around the time the sound disappeared. My guess is when he died, he saw his father still alive, living only a few miles away. He sent one last F you through me to hear.